Hello and welcome to a Bergkamp Wonderland, an Arsenal podcast. I'm Gimli and tonight I'll be joined by, fresh from taking pictures of himself on the toilet and posting them in the WhatsApp group, you'll be happy to hear he's still as sick as ever. It's Danny the GFP. Hello, Danny.
Oh, don't ask me how I got on at the hospital today.
Oh, mate, I've seen a picture of your naked body once this week and it's just too much.
But let's put it this way, I was meant to go for an MRI. I was too fat to get in the machine.
No way.
Seriously?
No, what?
Oh,
I'm trying to think of something that MRI could stand for, towards you that's quite gross. But give me time, I will think of it.
Because I was so fat, they said your arm has to go in first, like Superman, because it's my elbow they're doing. And they said, because you won't be able to lay down. They were trying to be polite. They said, if you lay down with your arms at your side, they won't show up in the MRI.
Well, maybe they didn't know your ass from your elbow.
Oh, I take it you're here all week.
No, just about.
Excellent.
Right. Joining us all the way from Poland and still clinging on to his newly acquired bus pass, it's Steve, Mr. Lord Hillwood. Hello, fella.
Hello, mate. How you doing? Yeah,
I expected a swear word.
No, I'm saving those for later. It's warmed up a bit out here, actually. I think we had a load of snow and it disappeared overnight. I don't know where it's gone, but it's a very welcome plus 4 degrees at the moment, which is when it should be minus 20, so I'm not complaining.
Oh, that sounds all right. It's just cold and rainy over here. Well, in Wales, I say. But hey ho.
But it's always like that in Wales, and you don't have to live there.
Whatever. Right. Next up, we welcome a man that's literally covered the whole of Liverpool and Manchester in a sticky white residue. It's old chocolate voice himself, FK.
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Hello. Do you know what your original intro had something about Spider-Man and a stag do?
I just don't want to know. Honestly, the sooner I forget about that weekend, the better.
My computer wouldn't save it, so I forgot it. I had to write it again. This one was nowhere near as good as the first one.
Oh,
It'll do. It's great to be back.
And now Phil sat there thinking, oh, fucking hell, me next. Right. Making his debut on the show, and a man I'm told will give our grumpy Venezuelan John a run for its money, it's Phil Wall from Angry of M5. Hello, Phil.
Hello, nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. I know there'll be a lot of people listening in just for you.
I'm sure they will now. I'm sure they'll be listening thinking, where's Jeff?
Oh, no. Our lovely Jeff is in Dubai, isn't he, fellas?
Working hard.
He's out there laundering money and selling his women.
Beautiful.
There's more truth to that than we'll ever know.
Yeah.
We've got 2 games to cover this week, but before we do, let's go over to Danny for the headlines and scores from Arsenal across the board.
Who's dying?
Bong!
It's not even me.
Oh, Steve dies live on air. Someone say bong. Someone say bong.
Bong.
Everton draw at Emirates on Sunday with a late equaliser.
Bong.
Arsenal crash to defeat in Naples and miss out on top spot.
Bong.
Arteta scandalously I say, sent off.
Bong.
Steve still dying in the background a little bit.
Bong.
Arsenal could face Spanish giants in the next round.
Bong.
Arsenal draw at home to Spurs in the FA Cup. Let's just say drawn.
Bongy, bong, bong.
Man City v Arsenal in top game. Can we win it?
Bong.
Yes, we can. A Bergkamp Wonderland bongs not flowing as smoothly this week as we would like them to have done.
Indeed. Bong.
This week's Arsenal news was sponsored by GC Debt Recovery. If they owe you money, send in the Struttermeister.
Bong.
Right, on to the roundup with the results. We'll start off with the ladies. The ladies have played no games. Right, we'll now move on to the under-21s. They beat Torquay, the mighty Torquay. Beaten 5-0 in the FA Youth Cup last Friday with goals from Maitland Miles. Iwobi got 2. Crowley and Mr. Jack Jebb got the other one. Their next game is playing Leicester City on Monday at home, which is a 7 p.m. kickoff. We are still 6th in the league. 3 games in hand we have, though. God, that's a bit... what's that fat bloke out of Star Wars? I can't remember his name. One who speaks backwards. Just sounded like that. I am. So thank you. We've got 3 games. That's him. 3 games in hand over the leaders Fulham, but they have 8 more points than us, so we could still end up top of the league. But as we know, youth football, it's not just about the winning; it's the taking part. They're all winners. The under-19s lost yesterday afternoon, 3:00 kickoff, 2-1 away to Napoli in the UEFA Youth League, with Akpom scoring our goal just after Napoli went ahead. So just like the first team, we finished runners-up in that group, but Napoli won the group. And so we've got no idea who we're playing next because I didn't check. And I don't even know if they made the draw yet. Oh, I've also been drinking Pepsi. Oh, other fizzy drinks are available, so I'm liable to a very loud and unexpected
Fanta
burp.
Or Coca-Cola, or possibly even Sprite, or Lilt for the totally tropical taste.
Yes, I wanted Pepsi Max, but they sent me Pepsi, so I've got 24 cans of a drink I don't even like, full of calories because I'm a bit chubby. Anyway, the under-18s were meant to play away at West Ham last Saturday, but the game was postponed due to something. They didn't say what, it just said PSP. I take it that meant postponed, or it was sponsored by Sony. So the next game is also away at Leicester this Saturday, 11:30 a.m. kickoff. Well, I've done it to say a.m. is it? Because it's not going to be p.m. Although again, if you're playing in Italy or Spain, it could well be p.m. because they kick off at some stupid times there. We are now rock bottom of the South League and are 2 points behind West Brom, who are slightly above us. There you go. That took long enough, didn't it?
God, didn't it just?
It's a podcast all in its own.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. Thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, see you.
The first game to talk about tonight is our 1-1 draw at home to Everton. FK, will go straight over to you to get your thoughts on this one.
Thanks, Gim. Well, I want to start by saying that I thought it was a fair result. And actually, I would disagree with a lot of the criticism that the club have received since the game. I thought it was a worthy point against a very good team in excellent form. I mean, you can't expect to win every game. I think that the frustration kind of stems from the fact that we took the lead quite late in the game, and then obviously, as you can see, just a few minutes later, with just a few minutes to go, is really disappointing. But at the end of the day, Everton have got a very, very good record with Martinez this season. They've only lost 1 game since the start of the season, and they have the second best defensive record. And actually, thinking about all the teams that I've seen come to the Emirates in recent years, they were actually one of the best sort of away visiting team performances that I've seen in a long time. We started a bit poor in the first half. I thought Everton pressed us really well right from the top of the pitch all the way through the team. Didn't really give us time to breathe on the ball, and sadly for them, they kind of ran out of legs. And second half we came out, we were a little bit better, and obviously we got the goal, got the breakthrough in the end, but they equalised through actually a very good finish. So all in all, a fair result for me, and Everton are a very good team, so it's a worthy point.
Okay, you said that Everton, you think, was probably the best opponent that we've faced so far this season. Phil, is that something that you'd agree with?
I think on the day, they probably were. Having said that, we couldn't get past Man United. Everton are clearly a good team and they're in good form. The question for me is that form going to hold for the season, or in 2 or 3 months are they going to slip away? We had an early shot at Southampton being near the top of the league. They've already disappeared. Everton may go the same way. They don't have the depth of squad of Chelsea or Man City or even Arsenal these days. So it's going to be tricky for them to stay up there. But on form, yeah, they're the best team we played. But having said that, at home, I expect a win. If Arsenal are top of the table and playing at home, I expect to win. So for that reason, I was disappointed with only a draw.
And Steve, we'll go to you next. 44% of the possession. That stat was courtesy of BBC for those wishing to hang me up if I've got that wrong. But Arsenal had 44% of the possession. Is that good enough for a home game?
I think it's a question of possession. I mean, because if you look at some other results in other teams' games, they've beaten big teams with a minority of the possession. What's so annoying about the whole Everton performances is that 48% of their goals have been scored by their 3 loan players, none of whom they could afford to buy, and none of whom they could afford to pay their full wages. So Everton's position in the league, whilst it's a great performance and great management and tactics by Martinez, is somewhat devalued by the fact that 3 of their players are players from other teams, and when those players are not there next season, where are they going to be? It's a classic case of clubs like Chelsea and City lending players to other teams they don't consider rivals to strengthen them to take points off their real rivals. And, I was disappointed that Gibbs didn't get tighter to the guy that scored. I think it was quite obvious he was worried about Coleman, who was also free on the right. You have to ask what Rosicky was doing. But, they put in a good performance for 50, 60 minutes. They were all over us. They did wear out, as FK said. And, a draw is probably a fair result. And, yeah, I know we lost to Man United, but they fluked that goal. And apart from that, they did nothing else for the whole game. And, I think so far in the Premiership, Everton are probably the best team we've played so far. And so for me, a draw was fair.
I think it's interesting, Gim, that it's not the first time that we've actually had less possession than our opponents this season. And I wonder if that's a change in style of the way we approach our games, knowing that, let's sit back, let's sit off, let's let the other teams kind of come onto us and we can maybe break on them or play a different style of football. I can't remember who just mentioned it. Maybe it was Danny. I mean, we have in the past always dominated games in terms of possession, chances on goal, we've outpassed the opposition. But for me, it doesn't. Cardiff, I think, was an example as well. We had less possession than them, but we went out there and beat them. We were just a bit more clinical.
Southampton also.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Game where we had less possession.
And with regard to Phil's point, I mean, yeah, I would agree to an extent that if you're at home and you're flying in terms of form, then you'd expect to win your home games. But I don't know, I don't think you can expect to win every game that you play at home. There's always going to be a banana skin. And for Everton, if we're being brutally honest, there's no way they deserve to lose that game. They deserve to get something out of that game. And so I think that's why it was a fair result.
I mean, a lot of people will single out Ross Barkley for his performance that day. But, Danny, from an Arsenal point of view, can we not say that Koscielny also had a fantastic game?
Yeah, definitely. I think the two at the back were two of our arguably most important players. Well, three at the back. I think it includes Szczesny or Szczesny. I've been trying to say that all week. Szczesny. I'm thinking of, I can't even say his bloody first name. Thomas, that's his middle name. Oh, Tommy boy.
Voracek.
I'm just terrible with it. But I think the three of those have been so important for us. But over the only worrying thing over the last two games, I know we're going to talk about Napoli later, but Arsenal, when the Everton and Napoli games, we had 3 shots on target and 3 shots wide in an hour and a half of football. No, in 3 hours of football. Yeah, including both games. Oh, was that your notes? It's gone off track already.
Is that FK just gone, wow, I was going to talk about that. Bollocks to you, Danny.
No, not at all.
I thought that was you.
Yeah, we thought it was you, Gim.
No, it wasn't me. I'll write my notes on a laptop, thank you very much.
You ain't ripping that in half.
I fucking hope not, anyway.
Right. Looking at the Everton game, I think we were... I mean, to only have, like we already said, a small amount of possession was a little bit worrying, and plus we had 14 fouls, which is quite unlike us. But to be outplayed, outshot, out everything at home. Oh, hold on, I think I'm gonna burp. No, I'm not drinking that stuff anymore. It's making me uncouth. I've lost my train of thought. Now, yeah, that goal Gerard, I shall call him because I can't pronounce his surname. The goal that he scored. Yeah, I played that back frame by frame. And how, because Szczesny was looking to his left. Szczesny had the left-hand part of the post covered. And then looking at the angle that Szczesny must have been looking at, how he got that ball around Gibbs when Gibbs was blocking out the other half of the goal. That is a goal. You could try that 73 times and it may only come off once rather than 99 out of 100 not coming off. That was just how he managed to do that was just... unbelievable. I don't know if it had because he'd only just come on, hadn't he? I think he'd only been on for 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah. But I think without Szczesny having the fantastic game that he had, but I'm a bit concerned, only a little bit. We've drawn at home to a team that a lot of people are saying are one of the best teams in the league, and I really like Everton, and I hope they do well. I'd love to see them come runners up to us in the league. That'd be great. But this is now 2 games in a row where we've looked very lacklustre and not taking the game for granted. But I think having such a small squad and such little rotation is maybe starting to catch us up a little bit.
That's a very good point, Phil.
Oh, thank you.
Can you elaborate on what Danny said? Do you agree with it?
I think the squad, I don't think is a problem at the moment. I think what is good is that if we're having a bit of a dip in these games, the last 2 games that we've seen, where, as we're all saying, we haven't played the best that we can, We've got a point out of the league game, and we've still qualified in the Champions League, and that's without playing at our best. So if we're going to have a dip, maybe it's worth having it in these games and hopefully back on form fairly soon.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's also worth pointing out, Danny, that this is an Everton team that had just beaten United at Old Trafford, and they've already beaten Chelsea this season. And they've lost one game in 15 under Martinez, and he's doing something good. And like I've already said, I mean, you can't go into every game expecting to just turn teams over. And
I'm happy with a point, definitely. Yeah,
I think
as long as we play 19 home games a season. I think if we draw against the 2 or 3 best teams at home and beat the rest, we aren't going too bad. But at the beginning, Gimli was saying a little something about there's always a surprise team. Like at the moment, it's Everton doing so well. Do you know after 13 games who was third in the Premier League last season? Anybody?
Stoke?
No, Stoke were 12th. Stokes. No, Stoke were 12th.
Absolutely. Newcastle?
No.
Swansea?
No.
Hull?
No. Yeah, they may well have been third in the Championship, Steve. West Brom.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Man United were top with 30, Man City 29, West Brom with 26. And the season before that, after the same number of games, Newcastle were in 4th place. So there's always a couple of teams one team, I remember years ago, it used to be Wimbledon. They had a great run at the top of the league for the first half. Always one team that surprises everybody coming up to Christmas. And I hope it isn't Everton. I hope they are still there after Christmas and do really well, because they're probably my second favourite team in the league. And it's just really nice to see how bad a manager, them rubbing it in Moyes' nose, seeing what can really be done with Everton. And then seeing what Moyes has done with that.
I mean, I want to give Martinez as much credit. He's a nice bloke, but the fact is, Everton are playing with 3 players from someone else's team, and 2 of those are having 70% of their wages paid by Chelsea and City. There's no way they could afford Lukaku, and there's no way they could afford Gareth Barry's wages.
Yeah, but Steve, that's almost an irrelevant point, because I appreciate what you're saying in that.
Well, it's not, because they've scored 48%. Those 3 players have scored 48% of their goals.
Last season, West Brom had Lukaku up front, didn't they, when West Brom were third?
No, the reason why I say it's an irrelevant point, obviously, with respect, is because that's the loan system, that's the transfer system. Anybody can do it.
Changing.
Whether they change it or not, that's a different argument. But the fact is, you play what's in front of you. Everton have got those players on loan, and they're doing a job. And at the end of the day, that's just the way the Premier League's kind of set up. So whoever they have on loan, whoever they buy, there's always going to be, he shouldn't be there, he should be there, he shouldn't be here, whatever. But ultimately, they're registered with Everton for this season. We've got to beat them, and we didn't. So, and that'll be the same for every club that they face, apart from obviously the owner clubs of the players that they've got them for.
I think no Premier League team should be allowed to loan players to other Premier League teams. Because then, like Steve was saying earlier, and it's been said before, there is some tactics in that when you loan decent players to other teams to stop your rivals getting points.
Yeah, I'm with Steve on that. At the very least, they should be paying all the wages. Then if you can't afford them, you don't have them.
Yeah.
Right then. With that said, our next game was last night's 2-0 defeat to Napoli away from home. In the game, we saw Mikel Arteta get red-carded and a few nervy moments, but straight to Steve for his analysis.
The first half was very tough. They came out the blocks like men possessed, literally. I don't really think in the first half the pitch helped either them or us. But I thought we defended well. We were quite well organised in the first half. I just think recent games and things and not being able to rotate as much as we might like, despite the fact we did rest a few people, took its toll on us. I think maybe we could have done with making some substitutions earlier to not concede a goal. But the substitution by Benitez was, a revelation. The guy came on, he really made a difference to their midfield, and we didn't combat it. And unfortunately, we conceded 2 goals and finished second. That's the way it is. But then on the other hand, you've got to look at it that Napoli have not been defeated in Europe at home for yonks. They're not an easy team to beat, to be at any ground. So, it's unfortunate. We could have finished top. And on the other hand, Marseille might have scored an equaliser and a winning goal in the last minute, and Dortmund would have been out. I think from my point of view, looking at that group, when we drew the group, I just, Jesus wept, And I'm glad we qualified out of it, because I tell you what, a few of the other English teams certainly wouldn't. That's for certain.
No, very, very true. And we'll go to you, Phil. Do you think our performance last night was hindered in part by the referee at all?
I don't think so. I think the continental referees tend to be a little bit more fussy in some ways than English ones. I mean, if you're referring to Arteta and his red card, I think probably he deserved it, because that was the second tackle was definitely a booking. I don't know. I don't like to blame the rest for things. It was, as Steve said, Napoli came out very fast. We didn't really handle it very well in the first half. We kind of got into the game. We weren't creating an awful lot. Even with substitutions, we didn't create an awful lot. As Danny said earlier, we haven't made many chances in the last couple of games, and that's the disappointing aspect of it, I guess. As for their goals, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what happened on the second one at all. How did he get in there and score that with a defender and the goalkeeper right on top of him? And the first one, great turn and great shot. I was personally questioning whether Szczesny was a little bit too far off his line. He seemed to be almost coming out to close down, and maybe just gave Higuain too much of an angle. I don't know.
And FK, what do you make of Arteta's sending off? Do you agree with Phil that it was a sending off, or do you think that maybe it was a little bit harsh?
I think I would agree with Phil with the point that continental referees are sometimes slightly different in the way they officiate games, and I think Arteta, with the experience he's got, maybe should have thought about going into that second challenge twice, knowing that it was a bit of a delicate situation in terms of the game. But if I can, just about the game itself, I had a couple of thoughts going into it. One, I always had one eye on the City game on Saturday, and I know that obviously qualification was really important, but I was hoping that Arsenal would secretly, rest Koscielny, the likes of Ozil, Cazorla, and even Giroud. And actually, as it happens, we've been beaten in a game. We've exerted ourselves, and I think Henri made the comment on Sky Sports that he saw some of our senior players stretching at the end of the game, which kind of maybe indicates that they're a little bit in the red zone. Is that what Arsene calls it? And the second thing, guys, I mean, given the circumstances of the game going into the tie, I mean, Napoli, they had no choice but to attack. So I was really surprised that Arsenal didn't opt for any pace on either of the flanks to, exploit any counter-attack opportunities. And I was a bit, sort of complicated. I was a bit confused by the lineup. I thought, I saw the players that we had, and I just thought it was maybe an opportunity crying out for Walcott. I don't know if Gnabry was fit, but maybe he could have come in. And I don't know. I mean, obviously it's really easy for me to say in hindsight, because had we have drawn or won or topped the group or whatever, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I don't know. They were kind of my thoughts. And in terms of the result in general, yeah, it's always disappointing to lose. It was a bit close towards the end, but I mean, Dortmund got a very, very lucky winner at Marseille. I don't know if you saw the goalkeeper's clanger right in the last few minutes, but ultimately, yeah, no one gave us a chance when the groups were drawn. We got through. I think to go through with 12 points in a group like that should only give us confidence and bring on the next round.
Definitely. And Steve, over to you now.
I mean, when I sort of saw the lineups, I sort of had that sort of first thought that FK was just going about, like, why hasn't Walcott been picked? And then I looked at the pitch and realised we're playing an Italian team, and just thought, yeah, Wenger's not picked him because he knows he's going to get hacked down, and he's just come back from injury, and he probably wants him fit for the game against City. I think that referee was quite selective in what he was booking for people for. There were about 4 or 5 quite bad challenges by Gimli on Flamini and Arteta in the first half, none of which were punished. He didn't really do anything to their 2 central midfielders, who were putting their foot in until after they scored a goal. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's a lot to what Henri said, is that the fact is that we are now starting to see the signs of not having those couple of extra players or people match fit to be able to put into rotate, and hopefully we're not going to pay for it.
Yeah, a lot of people will have noticed, or maybe even not, and Danny will go to you with this one, that Arteta and Flamini can't seem to play together. Is that something that you'd agree with, or would you like to contest that?
I think, yeah, because usually I do agree with that, because they have both been given the same role. defensive midfield. Now, Arteta's been our defensive midfielder for 2 seasons, and now Flamini's come in to play the defensive midfielder role when Arteta wasn't there. So now they're both playing in the game, and I get the feeling that at times they're not sure who is going to be playing what role, because the entire career at our club, they've both played defensive midfielder, apart from the Champions League. Was it the Champions League run where Flamini played everywhere apart from goalkeeper the season before he left?
Yeah, back he played, didn't he?
Yeah, he played. I think he covered every position at one time or another. So I think that is a slight problem. I think, like many used to say about Lampard and Gerrard, where their styles clash, I think that they clash with that as well, and it is a bit of a shame. But I noticed that almost immediately after Arteta got booked, we were going down the left-hand wing. We had the ball, we got fouled, and the referee gave the ball to the Napoli player, and they had the free kick. And I thought that just summed up the refereeing on the night. I mean, you're very right in whoever said that Arteta should know better. He's played in Spain with Barcelona. He's played for PSG. Played in Spain with Real Sociedad and then before he went to Everton. And he's also played for Rangers, who have played in the Champions League themselves back then, I think. So he was only there for a couple of seasons or 1 or 2 seasons. So he's had plenty of experience. He should know what to expect from foreign referees, because they are going to blow up for everything. And to be the captain and to be booked twice and sent off, I think it's a little bit silly, and he should have known better than that. But we're through, like we're saying with the Everton game. We're 5 points clear at the top. Doesn't really matter. This is we've drawn, we've lost away to these, and it doesn't really matter because we're still through, apart from the fact of who we might get in the next round. Yeah,
exactly. I think it's important that we don't make this podcast very miserable, so to speak. I think there's still lots to be happy about, and we're not going to kind of dampen the mood. But we'll carry on with Arteta Flamini, and I understand, FK, you've got something to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, to be honest, there's a lot of people have been saying Arteta Flamini combination doesn't work. But actually, before the game, I thought that was probably the right thing to do, because I thought it's a game that we just wanted to avoid defeating and possibly get them on the break and etc. So you'd want that kind of like that combination, that axis sitting in front of the back four. And I think we used, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we played Flamini and Arteta against Napoli in the first game in the reverse fixture, which we won 2-0. And I think Arsene opted for A, fresh legs, B, a combination that had worked in that particular fixture already. Going forward, whether it works again or not, I don't know. But long term, I suppose you'd see Jack or Ramsey filling one of those roles alongside either Flamini or Arteta. So I thought it was the right thing to do yesterday. Obviously didn't work, so maybe Danny's been proved right.
And FK touched earlier on the fact that other players could have been starting, and personally I agree with him. I mean, we could have seen Thomas Vermaelen starting last night. Phil, do you have any idea why this didn't happen, or do you think that he made the right move in putting out an all-star first team?
Well, Vermaelen's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, Mertesacker and Koscielny are playing extremely well together. Even on Sky Sports last night, I saw them discussing whether they were the best central defensive partnership in the country, which Gary Neville hesitated quite a long time before he gave a non-committal answer. But they're certainly up there, and to disrupt that central defence by putting Vermaelen in, maybe Arsene thought that was too much of a change, and it was better to have the two of them and the two defensive midfielders in front of them. Vermaelen must be not particularly happy about not getting games, I guess, because obviously he's got the World Cup coming up, and he's going to struggle to get in the Belgium team if he doesn't get games. So tricky for him. But personally, I think it was right under the circumstances to keep the usual two in there, especially with a change in front of them and a more defensive pairing in front of them. I would personally have preferred to see only one of Arteta and Flamini in there and try and be more attacking and try and take the play to the opposition rather than sit back and wait for them to come, which clearly they were fairly capable of.
Yeah. And Steve, on the Arteta-Flamini debate, we'll let you close this one, because before we actually push record on the podcast, you gave a very short, sharp, stern answer to the question. So for you, can they play together?
No, not at all. I think Danny gave a very good analogy. It's the Lampard and Gerrard situation all over again. And my main problem with this is, first of all, is if you look at Flamini, he's an organiser. He's showing people where they should be. He's positioning himself. he goes and wins the ball, he'll give it straight to an attacking player or a playmaker, and he'll go back and sit back where he should be. He always goes back and sits in front of the back four. But Flamini doesn't slow our game up. Flamini's a quick passer. He's always looking for a pass forward. He's very, very less likely to pass sideways, whereas Arteta is more likely to pass sideways, and he does slow the pace of the game. And for me as well, I think, despite the fact age-wise there's not a lot between them, I think it's very noticeable that Arteta is starting to get tired a lot quicker in games. I think at that age it probably takes you longer to recover as well. I think Flamini's got a better physique. But the main thing for me, really why Flamini should be the starter, is because he doesn't get knocked off the ball like Arteta does. He's got much more of a physical presence there. And I think he complements, the other players that are playing around him better. And I think Arteta's the guy you want to be bringing into midfield when you want to close up shop at the end of a game. I don't necessarily think that he's the person you put on the pitch to start the game at high pace, to take it to the opponents. And I just think that between the two of them, that they don't counterbalance each other. They actually almost outweigh each other. So I think the best advantage is to start with Flamini.
Okay, I hear you. Right then, with qualifications secured then, Danny, over to you. I understand that you have a list of our possible opponents for the next round. Once Danny's given the list, I'm going to go around and ask you all who we prefer out of that group. So, Danny.
All right, give me a bit of leeway on this, because I completely missed off the last two teams, and I hurriedly added this back on earlier today when my mate reminded me. We could still get Barcelona. Right, Man United. This is all the teams that finished top of their groups, because all the teams in the top will play a team that finished second. That's the way it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unless they're from the same league as you.
Yeah, and unless you were in the qualifying the previous stage with them, like we can't get Dortmund. So Man United, they finished first. Can't play them because they're English. Real Madrid, we can play them, and from my quick looking over the internet, the last time we played them was in 05-06, 0-0 at Arsenal, and we beat them 1-0 at Real Madrid. And I remember Fabio Capello was the manager then, and I saw that game at Highbury, and it was brilliant. And I think Anelka might even have been there as well. Not sure. Right, the next team is the winner of the group is PSG. We last played them, I think, in 93-94 in our Cup Winners' Cup run, and we beat them 1-0 at home and 1-1 away, I think. Next one, Bayern Munich. Well, we all know all about those. We played them twice last season and lost 3-1 at home, beat them 2-0 away. We played them in 04-05, 1-0 at home, lost 3-1 away. And then we played them in 2000-2001, which might have been the games we played at Wembley. Not too sure about that. 1-0 we lost away, and we drew 2-2 at home. Can't play Chelsea because they're English. Can't play Borussia Dortmund because they were in our group. Atletico, it's not Atletico, is it? It's Atletico Madrid. We've never played them from what I can see. And the final team is Barcelona, who we played them 2010-11, 3-1 at theirs, 2-1 at ours. In 2009-10, 4-1 at theirs, 2-2 at ours. And then 05-06 final in Paris. I was there. I'm not talking about that result. And 99-2000. Oh, that might have been the ones that we played at Wembley. 1-1 at Barcelona and lost 4-2 at home. Yeah, I think that was the Wembley one, because I think the De Boer brothers were very much on form that day. So there you go. There's all the teams you could possibly play.
Wow, sounds like we'll piss the next round then. With that said then, Danny, who would you pick?
Well, you've got to look at it from the point of view of whether you want to try and make some money. I personally, my order of preference for winning stuff is Premier League first, probably Champions League second, FA Cup third. I'd much rather win the Premier League. So I know we don't have much choice, and I doubt very much Wenger's going to listen and then put out Sanogo in all starting 11 positions. But I think I'd like to. I wouldn't if we're not going to win it, so I'd like to get knocked out as soon as possible. I know you make £250,000 per draw, £750,000 per win. At least that's what it was on Championship Manager last time I played it. So I think I'd pick, if we want to go through, Atletico Madrid. If not, then I don't care. Maybe PSG. So probably one of those two, because I get bored playing my Bayern and Real because they're just brilliant at the moment. But Barcelona are at the moment a wounded animal with a new manager. Messi has had one of his legs fall off, so he's having a new one created from stem cells. And they've only got Neymar up front.
With one of them 3D printers.
Only.
That's
Only, yeah.
yeah, only.
He was single-handedly raping Celtic last night.
Yeah, that was. But they got one back.
just the one.
Georgia Samaras.
Phil, over to you now. So, out of that little lot that Danny explained, then who would you prefer and why?
I would favour. I'm not with Danny on this, trying to get knocked out as soon as possible. Just on the basis we probably won't win it, because as long as there's a chance, I'd rather stay in. So I would go with the teams who don't have the big pedigree, because as we've seen with Man City, it's taken them a couple of years to kind of get into the competition, and that seems to be the way with clubs when they come through. So although PSG have been in the Champions League many times, they don't have the same kind of pedigree as Barcelona, Bayern, Real Madrid. So I would go for either PSG or Atletico Madrid as preferred opponent on the basis that I want to get through. Although we beat Madrid last time, Real Madrid that is, last time on the way to the final, I think they're a much better team than they were then. So I don't fancy them. Bayern, no thanks. I think they're still too strong, and Barcelona, with or without Messi, we've had them too many times and failed too many times. So I would hope for Atletico Madrid or PSG.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve?
It's a difficult one, isn't it, really? There is a part of me that wants to see us play Real Madrid and see Flamini put Bale into orbit and end his career horribly. But I think Phil's two choices are right. I think PSG, they're a team of expensively overpaid, ego-ridden players. It'd be very interesting to see their line up against ours. And they're a French team, so they'll view it as a derby, and courtesy of our manager, and it should be a good game. I think Atletico Madrid, whilst they might not have the greatest pedigree in the Champions League, they've got plenty of European experience. They're a very tight team, very well organised. They're not gonna give us anything. And out of all the teams in the next round, everyone's a big team. Atletico Madrid aren't there by accident, So if we play them, then we'll have to be at our very best, and we'll have to take our chances.
Okay, and finally, FK.
You've got a real dilemma there. You've got some great teams, great clubs with so much history. I mean, personally, I think I am sick of seeing Barcelona come over and do us. And Real Madrid, even though they may stutter every now and again, they've got some incredible individual superstars in that team. And I think you could maybe keep out one or two on the night, but over two legs, they'd probably overpower you. I'd quite like to see PSG because I think they're kind of newish to that Champions League arena, well, certainly in recent years anyway. But, for me, we play Champions League football to go sort of head-to-head against the biggest and best clubs in Europe, and I don't want to go out like Danny just to kind of like strengthen our chances in other tournaments. But for me, that's what the Champions League's about. I want to see us, really like come up against the best teams in Europe, the best players. There's a reason why we keep talking about the Barcelona night at the Emirates rather than, spanking Sparta Prague or whatever in a game. That's what makes memories. That's what it's about being a football fan. And I don't buy the notion of, you want an easy path all the way to the final, because we've had easy ties in the past and we've never got to the final. And ironically, in 2006, like Danny said, we had to play Real Madrid and Juventus before we got to Barcelona, unfortunately. So I just want to see Arsenal play the best teams, and I want to see how we stand up against them. And maybe there's a bit of unfinished business against Bayern Munich, and the German teams seem a little bit weaker maybe, or a little bit more vulnerable this year than they did last season. So I don't know, a tough one, but PSG would be quite nice because I haven't seen them before, so that would be my pick.
I think, if you remember some of our great nights in Europe, maybe you've got to play the best to be the best, and I think that's what you've got to look for. I personally would welcome anyone at the moment, and let's see how it goes. But we'd like to thank for that question, because it was sent in by one of our listeners, and this is from Jessica, who is on Twitter at JDIMARCA. Isn't that right, Danny?
Certainly is. I forgot to say that in the beginning. But a point that I wanted to also bring up about the Champions League qualification, you look at some of the teams that have now gone into the Europa League. Shakhtar Donetsk, they're not shy of spending a few quid. Juventus, back-to-back Italian champions, currently top of Serie A, and spent an absolute fortune on wages to get Tevez and Llorente and some others during the summer. They're playing in the Europa League. Benfica, another one that tends to buy 100 Brazilians every summer. Victoria Pleasant, I don't know anything about those. Basel, usually go out there and destroy Man United. Napoli, I mean, the amount of money they spent on Szechuan and all those other chicken-based players. And then FC Porto, another one who have gone into that. And Ajax, who I know a bit of a fallen giant at the moment, but still a half-decent team. So we've spent not much money in the summer. We haven't done that much re-strengthening. And to be ahead of the likes of Napoli and especially Juventus, I think that is a bit of an achievement.
Yeah, definitely so. Right, our next feature covers the Christmas drinks on Monday that the club threw. FK and Phil, I understand that you both attended. So, FK, could you give us a little taster of what went down, please?
Yeah, well, it was, I think, a ceremony that the AST instigated, I think, a year back or a couple of years back, but Arsenal now actually host it and run it. And it's basically an event where some officials from the club, including Gazidis and I think Sir Chips Keswick was there, but I didn't actually get time to see him, where they invite a couple of hundred fans. They come in, give us drinks and food and nibbles, and you can mingle with each other and chat with the club staff. So it was my first time at the Christmas drinks, and I quite enjoyed it. Got to meet the likes of Phil and various other Twitter characters and people that I have always wanted to meet. And it was quite interesting listening to Gazidis speak about so many different things. And there were lots of opportunities for fans to go up to him and ask him questions about anything from food prices to safe standing to atmosphere to all sorts. So I thought it was quite an informative evening. But Phil, maybe you're more seasoned in this area. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it was started as an AST event. It was our Christmas drinks, which we just held at the club to give AST members the chance to go and stand around in club level for once in a season when they couldn't afford the ticket. But then last year, the club decided to sort of hijack it and invite all the other fan groups as well. Which is, admirable of them in some ways, but I think that what they're trying to do is just say, okay, AST, you're not actually more important than anybody else, so you're not having any drinks here unless you're doing it on our terms. So they've taken it over. This was the second year that they've done that, and but the format was basically the same as you said, FK. They send a couple of board members along to chat with the little people and mingle with us and give us one free drink each, and then we can pay the exorbitant bar prices and also send a bit of food out. And this year, actually, the food was certainly better than it has been previously when I've been there, so that was a nice improvement.
Okay.
I think, sorry, Gim, just on another point, perhaps a little bit more serious. I think it's quite nice that the club do these things, because I'm not sure of many other or even any other Premier League club that allows the chief exec to kind of just mingle. I mean, there was no security or anything. I mean, you never know who might end up at these things because the supporters groups are responsible for distributing places and tickets. But I think it's quite good. We've had question and answer sessions in the past. We've had obviously these Christmas drinks, and it is a chance for people to genuinely ask anything they want. I mean, when I was standing by Gazidis, some of the questions from where did you get your suit from to why is there not enough merchandising for females within the club shop to safe standing, what are you doing about it? And it became quite, what's the word? I wouldn't say it became quite heated, actually. I mean, there were a couple of times when Gazidis just wasn't allowed to talk and he was trying to defend his own corner because a lot of the stuff that is obviously mentioned is actually out of his control. But I think it's quite good that the club do it, and I think fans acknowledge that and they appreciate it.
And FK, did Mr. Gazidis give out any tips for January?
Yeah, he said we were going in for Suarez, Lewandowski and Royce. I think that's what you wanted me to say, wasn't it, Gim? No, he's not going to say anything like that. I mean, there were people that asked, are we going to buy anyone? Is Wenger's getting a new contract? What are you doing about Bakary Sagna? But as you'd expect, the good talker that he is, and he is a very, very polished talker, he didn't really give much away. And why would he? I mean, he's not going to use that as, a public platform to give away information that they wouldn't release in the press in the first place. So, no, there was nothing, nothing that was a revelation. There was nothing alarming. He mentioned that he obviously mentioned Pat Rice and how the club was trying to support him. He did actually say at the start when he opened, he said that he was proud that the club had made such a good start to the season, but it was important to realise that the club have achieved nothing yet. The boys know that, the boss knows that, the staff know that, and actually it's a long journey ahead. That was in his opening few minutes, but nothing too revealing. I mean, Phil, did you have any conversations or did you overhear anything? Was there anything else that you want to maybe add to that?
Well, what you say about Ivan is interesting. It's he's not going to give things away, as you say, but the fact is he doesn't make the decisions on the football side anyway. That's purely down to Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger decides what players he wants, what price he's prepared to pay for them, what contract they're going to get, how long it's going to be, when he's going to improve that contract, when he's going to sell them. All Ivan can do is stand there and say, yeah, as a club, we would like to buy more players, or as a club, there's money available to buy players. But everything else is down to Arsene. So, it's great that Ivan comes out and meets people at these events, but really, he doesn't have the authority within Arsenal to say anything on the football side. And unfortunately, he doesn't really have the authority on the ownership side, because that's all with Stan Kroenke. So he's in a little bit of a difficult position. So in that sense, fair play to him for coming out.
Absolutely.
I would just say, I didn't speak to Sir Chips personally. He was only there for a short while early on. But my good friend Kevin Witcher, who's the editor of the Gooner, did talk to him for a while. Kevin actually thought he was talking to Lord Harris at the time. Afterwards, that it was actually Sir Chips. But nonetheless, he did ask him about what they talk about in the boardroom, what they talk about at the board meetings, and how much of that is football, and how much they try and influence anything on the football side. And Sir Chips admitted that they don't really go into the football side. They talk about the finances and they talk about what's available for the manager to spend, and they leave the rest of it up to the manager. So, that's from the horse's mouth. That's what the chairman is telling us happens.
FK, did at any point did you go up to Gazidis or any of that long go, don't you know who I am?
Well, I did. And
he came up to me and said that.
He said, absolutely, I recognise the Galaxy voice. No.
Did he try to dry hump your leg?
No, he didn't. He's do you know what? I actually have a lot of time and appreciation for Gazidis. I think that feels...
Yeah, you were saying that before the podcast started recording.
Yeah, I mean,
tell us a little bit about what you were saying about him, about he's a nice bloke.
Well, yeah, he is a nice bloke. And like Phil says, I feel for him sometimes because he is caught between a rock and a hard place. And actually, he doesn't make many of the decisions, and a lot of the questions that people ask about standing and ticket prices and all that kind of stuff, they're problems that aren't really exclusive to Arsenal Football Club. So what do you expect a guy like that to say in a position like that? And so he is brave, but he's an excellent talker. As chief executives go, if I was employing a chief exec, he because of the way that he's kind of acted over the last 3 or 4 years, he's never hid from us. He's as open as you would get with a chief exec. He's always open to mingling with fans, and he's a smart guy. He went to Oxford University. He's played football from a very, very young age, won colours as a footballer, went to Arsenal. He was telling us about his times on the stands and the terraces as an Arsenal fan when he was a boy. He understands the game. I know there's a lot of scepticism around about what does he actually do and what has he actually achieved, but he's been there for 4 years. Give a good chief exec 5 to maybe 7-10 years to really establish themselves in a football club. And if you think about the way that our tours are spreading now and expanding across the world, we did Asia in the summer, America next year, our corporate sponsorships, our shirt manufacturing, all that kind of stuff, and the type of revenues that he's talking about us generating, if we do reach that £300 million turnover mark that the likes of Bayern, or only Bayern, are generating by the end of next year, then you've got to say that he is actually doing a decent job. And he's cleared out the deadwood, or he's helped clear out the deadwood. He's helping Arsene close in on players like Ozil. And one actually interesting thing, someone asked him about transfers, and he openly said, with the director of communications next to him, that if Arsene Wenger wanted to go out, he could go out and get a £50 million player in January and another £50 million player in the summer. So, I mean, that's obviously all football fans want to hear, and there are a few sort of like giggles and chuckles and bits of positivity there. But I like him. I've got a lot of time for him, and there's a lot of things that are outside of his control, and I think he gets a bit of unfair press from the fans.
A lot of people that listen to this podcast week in, week out will be aware of a certain Gavin from She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. And, and he's very, very critical of Ivan Gazidis, and he's one of the people that asked Ivan Gazidis, what do you do? But Steve, you're more in the know than other people to comment on this. Who is Ivan Gazidis as what he does for the football club? Can you explain to us in any more detail, please?
Well, I think anybody who asks a CEO what they do, if it's a genuine question, is fair enough. But most people ask it from a sarcastic point of view to try and intimate that they actually do very little. The fact is, the guy was hired. He had to be approved by Arsene Wenger. As FK clearly articulated, he has practically 0% of say on the football side of things. He also has very little say on the very lot of serious issues which are outside the club's control. So that takes out, things like safe standing and so on and so forth. The club can support them, but they can't change the law on their own. But the CEO runs the company. The CEO is the one who drives the strategy of the company forward. And I'm talking about an abstract hypothetical company here. I'm not calling Arsenal a company, even though it is one, because I know people don't like that word. But he's the person that picks all the directors and the senior management who specialise in varying parts of the business. He's the person that overgoes their plans, oversees everything they do, reviews everything they do, and works with the financial director to achieve the strategy. And that's no mean feat when you come to a company or a football club that's had a bunch of geriatrics treating it like a private gentleman's club for 35, 40 years, smoking cigars and drinking brandy, and a manager who's been left unmanaged to do what he wanted. And he's had to come in there, he's had to construct with Tom Fox a commercial department, they've had to get that on the road. They've had to deal with sponsorship deals which they were locked into that they couldn't get out of, which were designed for a previous time to finance the stadium deposit. He's had to do a whole lot of things. So in essence, what he's done is quietly behind the scenes transforming the business side of Arsenal, putting Arsenal in a position where it can earn the revenues it needs to earn for the manager to invest in the team. And he's done quite admirably at that. People may not like his salary. I think, yes, his salary is a bit much compared to other top FT 100 companies. But the fact at the end of the day is him and Fox have done a pretty good job on the business side of the club. You can always improve things. But the position we're in now, where we can, if what he said is true, we can buy a £50 million player a window. That's brilliant. So, you can't decry what he's doing. And I don't think any Manchester United fan ever asked David Gill what he did, or any Chelsea fan ever asked the Chelsea CEO what he did. I don't understand why Arsenal fans say that. The fact is, at the end of the day, it's what goes on the pitch. And at the moment, we're top of the league. We've qualified for the last 16 of the Champions League. We're going to announce a massive sponsorship deal next year with Puma, and there's a lot more things to come. So I think, you can probably say 7.5 out of 10 and let the guy carry on. As FK said, you can only really judge a CEO after 4 or 5 years anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. And Danny, is there anything else you wanted to add to this?
No, not really. I don't think the stuff that they've been talking about is what I would call my speciality at the club. So I'll just leave these lot to talk about it, because I'll just moan on about the fact that they have no cake there and it wasn't free. No, really, it's not a part of the club that overly bothers me. I'd rather stick to stats and facts and things that are 100%, then I can't be called that I'm wrong or making it up.
Lovely stuff. And I will apologise for any of you that heard me grinding in that, but I believe the modern day term is twerking and not actually grinding.
You got your Grinder app on again?
Yes, that's the one. I've got my Grinder app on. In a minute, I'm going to turn the Zippo application on my phone as well. So apologise if what that is. I apologise if that happens. Right, our final feature before we go to listeners' questions focuses on a documentary that was aired Tuesday on ITV4. In the documentary, we saw Patrick Vieira and Roy Keane record the rivalry between the pair and Arsenal-Manchester United in general. What was our thoughts on the documentary, fellas, and who watched it?
I watched part of it, and I think I've watched about the first half hour of it, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I managed to one of our American listeners asked us about it and said, what do we think to it? And I managed to find it on YouTube and get it. So if you are in America and you would like to see it, we'll include it if you go to the webpage on the website with the podcast on, we'll include a little link to it on there, because it is definitely a fantastic, from what I saw, interview. Because although we all hated Keane as a player, I was saying to G Diddley, is that your name this week?
No, I've gone back to Gimli.
Have you?
Yeah, I'm fucking sick of it, Danny. I can't do it.
You couldn't try to do with all the drive-bys and all the drug deals.
No, it's just
not easy being a gangster.
People calling me G Piddly and D Piddly and whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just Gimli.
Oh, okay. We were talking about this before the podcast and were saying that we both agreed that if Roy Keane is one of those players, if he was playing for your club, you'd love him. But if he's playing against your club, you'd hate him. But then when he retired, I always had a lot of time for him, although I don't think he's the greatest manager in the world. I just love the way, the two things that he said in that documentary, when they said, I'll tell him what they said about the best manager bit, Gim.
He said, they asked Roy Keane and they said, who was the best manager you played under? And he said, like...
He had a bit of a pause.
He probably gave it about 5 to 10 seconds. And he said Nigel Clough.
No, and then
Brian Clough, that's the way he said.
A bit of a push for Nigel.
Nobody is going to say Nigel Clough.
Even Nigel Clough wouldn't say Nigel Clough.
There's a big faux pas.
He said Brian Clough, and then he said not Alex Ferguson, and then Keane just looked into the camera. He said, "You asked me a question, I answered it." Oh,
that was brilliant. And then he didn't have the bit I thought was he must have done this on purpose. He's best right back. Did everyone see who didn't? Oh God,
yeah,
was
Paul Parker.
Paul Parker. The bloke was an idiot. He was. Oh no, I won't. I take that back. He was an idiot because I don't know the bloke. He wasn't as good a right back. I wouldn't even put him in my top 10 right backs. So I mean, Gary Neville, as much as you hate him, another player, hate him if he doesn't play for your club, but he is the best thing on Sky Sports at the moment, Gary Neville, and he is honest, which is one of the. He's not doing a Hansen where he's still bitter from all those years of beating us, apart from the odd occasion. But I thought that was the bit where he decided to put Paul Parker in there above Gary Neville. So then you think, is he taking the mickey? Is he doing it to have a go? And then someone I saw, who was it? Someone was on. Oh yeah, when they said picking your best 11, and they went, what have some of these players got in common? Picked out Schmeichel, Cantona, him, and I think maybe Scholes, and I think they were hinting none of them got on with Ferguson and didn't do as they were told, and they all end up falling out with him.
And Beckham as well was another
Beckham,
one.
That was it. Beckham, not Scholes. Yeah. So yeah, I'll watch it from the beginning again. But yeah, we'll put a link to it on the website. But it's definitely a very interesting thing. And they had a little bit of when they were looking back at video clips, it was funny. They were both laughing. I think they both now realise they were both a little bit not childish, but they were a little bit too enthusiastic about trying to kill each other.
Yeah, but just the passion that was shown between them two, and I think it had me in stitches at the end of the documentary when they were both in the tunnel and they were looking at each other, and they were looking at each other and laughing, and you could tell that there was a great amount of respect there, and that I think that the respect came from actually having to up their game to play against each other. And FK, you said something regarding the documentary which I think you tweeted and you put it in the group afterwards. It was very interesting. And you said about the class and about Arsene Wenger and how many players go away from Arsenal and would actually say that about the manager. Would you like to elaborate on that for the listeners a little bit more, please?
Yeah, well, I mean, the documentary itself I thought was absolutely superb. So if you haven't catched it, make sure you catch it on the website or watch it on ITV Player or whatever. I think what it captured really brilliantly was just the art of rivalry. And, you have to respect, I hated Keane at the time, but you have to respect just how much of a leader he was, how much of an influence he had on his team, and how he fought for his club. And the same with Vieira. And, when you were hearing Keane speak, you could see there was like this cold kind of like, steel face to him. Every time he spoke, not wincing, not smiling, gave nothing away. And equally with Vieira, even though he was smiling, you could sense there was like a dark brutality behind his smile, and actually either of them would kill you. And, it's funny because when I was watching the documentary, I couldn't help but smile all the way through it. And the reason why I felt that way is because I think, like most of us on the pod tonight, or all of us on the pod tonight, we've been blessed to live in that kind of era where we've seen them go head to head, enter battle every game year after year. And there was so much hatred between the two clubs, and they were the epitome of that hatred, I suppose. It was just a great documentary. In terms of what I said about Arsene, I think, Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, when you look at players that have left in the past, even the likes of Nasri, Cesc, and Vieira now working for City, they make it quite clear that Arsene was a great guy and he gave them so much support and belief, and no one speaks badly of them yet. You see so many players that have left United over the years that will openly criticise Sir Alex Ferguson, and Keane. It was quite amusing at times. I mean, Keane just went off and won every opportunity he got. He kind of just laid it down on Fergie, and I think that shows a lot of class about Arsene. But actually, if you think about it, it also highlights the differences in the way that the two managers managed their teams. I think Ferguson managed his players over the years with fear. He was ruthless, as Roy Keane said, and I think he almost, scared them into playing for him. And when they left, it was almost a bit of a release. And he always got rid of players at questionable times for them as individuals. But with looking back in history, he got rid of these players at the best times and managed to build squad after squad after squad, and very successfully. Whereas Arsene, he believes in players, he gives them all the pride, he gets them pumped up, gets them so confident based on their ability that. Maybe he's a bit softer in that approach, so they have fond memories of him. I don't know, but there is a certain element to that. You look at the likes of Vieira and even Nasri. He's not had one bad word to say. And RVP, when he left, he made that statement. But even to this day, Arsene has not said a bad word about RVP. I mean, he can't because he went and won the league. But many managers would. There's a lot of managers that would just come out and just let rip, but he hasn't. And I think only when Arsene's gone, and only when you look back, you'll remember that classy side to him. So that was the point that I made, but Gav wasn't too happy with that.
No, he's never too happy. Go, Steve, if you aren't.
No, I mean, I think you've got to look at that rivalry, and it's evidence of the fact that Wenger at first had Ferguson's number, and eventually he worked out a way how to beat us, how to wind us up. And that rivalry was great. We were at the top of English football. We were the bad boys of English football as well. 2 brawls at Manchester United, brawl against Norwich, previous history. But neither of those players shied away from the rivalry or putting their foot in or the challenge. But I think FK touched on a point. I think sometimes Arsene Wenger is too soft for his own good. I think there are times when players who are constantly injured should be told you're not getting your contract renewed. There are times when players who are his projects are allowed too much leeway and they're allowed to go on too long. Ferguson, more ruthless than that, always put Manchester United before anything else, perhaps even his own health on occasions. But I haven't watched the whole programme through yet. But you've got to remember, this rivalry wasn't just there because these were two great teams battling it out to win the league and to be top dog in English football. It was also there from Arsenal's point of view because Manchester United were cheats. They they dived around in a game and got Sol Campbell sent off.
Game 50.
Various other occasions, Van Nistelrooy going down quicker than one of FK's tarts in Liverpool. And the whole thing with Mike Riley and various other referees. And that's why that rivalry was so keen. That's why it was so sharp. That's why it was so harsh. And that's why those two players clashed so often, because they were the leaders of their teams. They were the two generals on the pitch. If you look at it now, even in Ferguson's later years, he was quite palled up with Arsene Wenger. Well, of course he was. We weren't a threat. I don't think he'd be so pally with him if he was still sat there today and we are where they are and Man United are where Moyes has dragged them down to.
But Steve, even with managers not being pally with one another, it's a shame that the league. I couldn't name to you 3 or 4 players with that kind of feistiness that those players had.
Moyes.
No, as in current players, like in today's Premier League. I mean, how many?
They didn't, do they? They'd get sued or sent off every game.
Yeah, but it's a shame because when you
probably even get arrested,
Duncan Ferguson style.
But it's a shame. Yeah, again, it was another sort of brute. But when you're watching football and so many years we've cried out for a tough tackling defensive midfielder. There's something that it just makes fans stand up, and that sliding tackle, winning the ball back, it gets the fans on their feet. That kind of fight, that desire. We've not had it. Maybe the game's changed, maybe the game's evolved, but I think that was the biggest regret. When you watch a program like that, you realise just how brilliant, just how passionate they were, and it's just such a shame that today's game you haven't got those types of characters, and it would add so much fire to it.
I think we have got one. I think Firmini does show that passion. There was a bit last night in the game where he went in foot up, won the ball and charged forward with the ball, and he actually got brought down, was fouled. I think he does epitomise that. He's a very passionate, well-organised guy with a lot of drive. Unfortunately, he's not the same size as Patrick Vieira, but he does make up. He does make up with it. What do you think, Phil?
I think it's quite interesting that when we're talking about the documentary itself, we're talking more about Keane than we are about Vieira, which Vieira is the Arsenal man, but we're talking about what Keane says and what Keane does, because he's really a more interesting character as far as this goes. Vieira, I think, is and was more honest, and Keane holds too many grudges and went over the top too much with the kind of violence that went on the pitch. I believe he said in that documentary, he said he went out to hurt people but not to injure them. Okay. Yeah. Are you sure about that, Roy, or are you just giving us a bit of bull now that times are past and people have stopped actually suing you? It's he did also what you should do, and I think the other thing that clearly came out was all his grudges, and as some of the guys have said here, he lists players in his team who didn't get on with Fergie. He didn't get on with Fergie, though. He says, he said in the documentary, I always backed the manager. Okay, Roy, so why did you go on MUTV and slag everybody off, and that was the end of your career? It's not really backing the manager. And then choosing Clough as his greatest manager. Well, to be honest, there is some justification for that, because Clough won the league with two different clubs. He took Forest from being provincial no-hopers in the second division to double European champions in about 3 seasons. And it took Fergie 6 years to win his first trophy at Man United, didn't it? Something like that. So, you can argue that at his peak, Clough was a better manager than Fergie. Fergie had all the money he wanted to spend, always had more money than anybody else in English football until the Oilies came in. So although I'm not saying Fergie's not a great manager, because he clearly is, but Brian Clough to me is certainly as good, if not better, than Fergie anyway. So on that point, I agree with Keane, but the rest of it is a load of grudges and too much of a past to make up for, as far as I'm concerned.
Another interesting point, I don't know if any of you guys picked it up, but Vieira was talking about how he left Arsenal, and the season previous it was all done and dusted that he was going to go to Barcelona, and he pulled out at the last minute. And then without Vieira's knowledge, even before he kicked that last penalty in the final, he was already done and gone pretty much.
That's a question from Twitter, actually. Aaron Redmond at Turnover King says, is it true what Paddy said on the ITV4 documentary? He wanted to stay, but Arsenal agreed to sell.
I
know nothing about that.
If you believe what was said in the documentary, then yes, it was. Steve?
Well, I mean, people are forgetting. I mean, there's always a thing when you look back in the past to remember the good old days, and you forget all the nitty-gritty that goes with it. I mean, Patrick Vieira was a great player for Arsenal, but we always had an annual season torment with him that he wanted to go to Real Madrid. And there was a fee agreed for him. I think it was 23 or 24 million quid for him to go to Real Madrid to replace Claude Makelele. And the deal was done. And off he went over there to agree his personal terms, only to find out that Makelele actually earned half of what Vieira was already earning at Highbury, so he refused to go. The sort of thing behind him being sold was Patrick, obviously in his position, took a lot of punishment, and he has actually got one leg shorter than the other and had a reoccurring hip injury, which was inevitably, if he kept playing in that position, was going to end his career. And I think when Dean saw the chance to sell him to Juventus and get the money he did for him, I think both him and Arsene Wenger decided it was time to put an end to that. Will he go, won't he go every season? But one of the most amusing comments I ever heard about Patrick Vieira was actually from Peter Hill-Wood. Vieira was moaning in the papers that we weren't spending enough money, we weren't buying enough players, we weren't replacing players, and that's why we finished second in the league. To which Hill-Wood turned round and said, "Yeah, well, perhaps if Patrick Vieira stopped getting sent off so often, we might have won it."
Wow. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add to this before we go to the Twitter questions?
I just think Vieira was the better player, but let's move on.
Yeah.
The better man.
Who would you want to come up against? Definitely not Vieira.
Yeah,
Thing is,
he'd kill
he
you.
said in the tunnel, didn't he? He said, how did you feel before a match when you were standing in the tunnel with Keane? And the one word he gave was excited. I mean, what does that tell you about the man? Just that he
Yeah.
relished it. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, we'll move on, Danny. And for the last time this evening,
God, I
we will
thought-
go
yes.
over to you and ask for the Twitter questions.
We're going to
please.
do this the same as we did last week, Steve. You, me,
Yeah.
and one. So you go first with Facebook question.
Okie dokie. Dum. We've got lots here. Marius Bagstein says, is Poldy the new backup, the new striker that we need in Jan, or should we just go out and buy a proper left winger instead and push Poldy up into the striking position permanently? He had very good stats there from when he was at Cologne.
Yeah, I brought this up on a thing, the podcast a few weeks ago, didn't I? I said that when he played in a 4-5-1 for Cologne in the season they went down, I think he played 8 games as the main striker in a 4-5-1. 8 games, scored 10 goals, and that was I think that was the only run of 8 games they played in that formation with him up front. And yeah, still in a team that got relegated with a manager that was a mental case. Oh, actually, I'll take that back. He wasn't a mental case. I don't know him. That seemed to be a little bit wonky. Yeah, definitely. I'd play him.
And it's very interesting. I've got another question here which is linked to that. And what Daniel Owen says, with all these wingers that are being heavily linked to our club, who do you see getting told their marching orders make way?
I've already answered one, so someone else go on that. Phil?
Well, I think Walcott is probably there for the long term at the moment. Rosický's coming towards the end of his career. Does he count as a winger? Cazorla, again, I mean, none of these players, apart from Walcott maybe, are pure wingers, are they? We've just got a surplus of small attacking midfield players, some of whom are better than the others. I think it's difficult to say. I can't see Walcott going anywhere. Rosický is definitely going to go somewhere fairly soon because he's already about 32. He's not going to last much longer. Cazorla, I don't think is kind of as deeply rooted in the team as he might be. Not now with Ozil arrived. Cazorla has almost become a spare part in some ways because he's a sort of substandard Ozil in many ways. So I'm not sure he's got a long-term future at Arsenal. But having said that, if you're going to get somebody in, it's got to be somebody better than him to replace him. So that's not necessarily easy.
How about you, FK?
Well, I think Santi Cazorla's safe. I think Walcott's safe. I think the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain and Gnabry are obviously going to get game time when they're fit and stuff. But I'd love to see us go out and get a proper out-and-out winger, someone who loves to hug the touchline and take people on for fun with an end ball. Not Phil's right. We've got a lot of the similar type players that like playing that sort of central attacking midfield kind of role. They float around with the ball and play those sort of through balls. And I'd also love to go out and get a proper centre forward to either supplement Giroud or replace him from time to time. I think Podolski could probably do a role there. Just to answer your first question, Danny, or Steve, sorry, he could probably do a role there. But I think we're Arsenal Football Club. If you want to win trophies and make progress from fourth to third to second to first, you need to have proper players in proper positions and have strength and depth. So I would love a proper out and out winger, either left or right, and a proper centre forward.
Well, I've got a Twitter question kind of linked to that from Neil McKeown. We had a McKeown at Arsenal. I think we ended up selling him to Dundee, a youth player who is at McKeown, which is MCKEOWN_AFC. He says, has Sir Ozil's arrival affected Santi's form? Steve?
I'm not sure. I think Santi was brilliant against Liverpool. I think recently he's just having a bad stretch of games. He was subbed again last night and he wasn't particularly very good. I think it all comes back again to what FK and what Philip said. We've got so many players who are sort of the same build, same physique and want to play in that central role and they can't all play in there. I'm of the opinion that Ozil shouldn't be out wide out on the left anyway. I think he should be stuck behind Giroud where he can really exact some damage, or even drop back deeper into the midfield where he can send that diagonal ball over the top to pick up Walcott when he's fit and playing, as he did against Sunderland. But Santi Cazorla is a very talented player when he's on form, and there are many teams that would love to have him in their squad, and he'd be one of the first names on the sheet. So I think it's just a bad period he's going through, to be honest.
How about you, FK? What do you think?
Well, I wouldn't even say it was a bad period. I think people forget Santi Cazorla was magic last season. Absolutely superb. Played every league game.
12 goals.
12 goals and whatever assists. And this year, he's had an injury, hasn't he? He was out for a few weeks. He came back, showed glimpses against Liverpool, and I think he's slowly getting back to his best. I mean, he was brilliant against Everton, even though we didn't win. And I think people, will see, when he returns to 100% fitness, when he's comfortable on the ball again, once Ozil moves into the centre, you'll see Ozil and Cazorla just light up the team, light up the Premier League. I think Ozil's just getting used to the team, obviously getting used to the league, and that's obviously causing a little bit of, change in the style that we play. But I don't think Ozil's had a detrimental impact on anyone at the moment. I think if anything, he's upped a lot of players' games, and he's maybe given some of his colleagues in midfield a real big boost. And I think Cazorla's going to be fantastic. So I love him. Yeah.
Do you want to pretend you're a guest, Gimli, and have a little go on this?
What about Cazorla and Ozil?
Yeah.
I think I'd probably agree with what FK said. I mean, Santi was brilliant last season. I don't think anyone forget that. He's shown glimpses of it this season. I mean, when any new player comes into a team, it's going to take, regardless of how good they are, it's going to take time for not just himself to adjust, but the other players to adjust to his style. I think it's only a matter of time before, we see the true potential of Ozil and Cazorla as a pairing.
I thought you said as a parent then. I thought it was something you're not telling us.
No, as a parent. I remember how we were all foaming at the mouth when Cazorla was due his first game back with Ozil, and, I think it's one to watch them two. I think they can be superb together. I really do.
How about you, Phil?
I'm not sure. To be honest, mate, I wasn't listening to your question because I was looking at who was coming out next on Twitter.
We do that. We do that the whole time. I was on the Goonosphere one, and they had to ask me the same question twice because I just do other stuff. It was, do you think that Ozil's arrival at Arsenal has affected Santi's form?
Well, I think it probably has, but his injury has also affected it. But I don't think Santi is going to get the chances that he had. And he had a great first season, as I think FK was saying. But that doesn't mean he's going to play like that every year. That might be his peak season, and he's never going to do that again. And I would rather have Ozil in the team than Santi because he just seems to offer more. I don't know. I can't define how, but to me, Ozil offers more. So I'd rather see him play than Santi, and it's difficult to play them both at the same time.
So do you lot agree that also that playing in he had a full season for his last season, then he went off to play in the Confederations Cup, then he got an injury, and it's all mounted up, so it's going to take a while for him to slot back into the team.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, you got another one from Facebook linked to this?
Yeah, we have done. Somebody said FK's already answered one of the questions because with his Gazidi saying that Peter Donahue says, should we try and break the bank again for a striker other teams will fear? Well, Ivan Gazidis has said we can spend 50 million quid. And then George Possum Stevens says, would you pay £50 million and Walcott for Suarez?
In an instant.
Definitely.
No.
In a heartbeat.
No.
Explain yourself, young man.
Sorry, gentlemen. 50 million plus Walcott, absolutely no way, because Suarez, I mean, that's just a huge amount of money. I mean, Walcott's, whether you like it or not, worth a lot on the transfer market. Secondly, he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he was our top goal scorer and top assister, if that's a word, last season. As frustrating as Walcott can be at times with his work rate and sometimes end product, he is a very valuable member of the team and one of the first names that you'd put on the starting lineup if he was fit, because He offers something that most of our players don't, and that's electric pace. He can create things. He's saved us from certain games in the past, and he scores a lot of vital goals. So I wouldn't say no. I think with the Suarez thing, and to answer your first of two questions, Steve, if you throw enough money at Liverpool, they would probably sell Suarez. And I think, Steve, you mentioned it a couple of podcasts ago when you said if Real Madrid wanted to buy Suarez, they would have got him by now. They would have had him in the summer. And money's not an object to them. You know, they would have somehow found the way.
So it was John that said it.
Or was it John? Sorry, my apologies. And in any case, I think they may have bigger fish to fry if they want to go for Cavani or Falcao or Aguero. I would love to go out and get Suarez, but not at the expense of letting Walcott go. Plus £50 million, no way. If it was something like 15 million plus Walcott, 20 million plus Walcott, then you would think about it. But 50 million plus him, no way, no chance. Silly, that's outrageously stupid.
Well, I disagree, and I'll tell you why I disagree. I think Walcott is a very frustrating player. I think he shows, unfortunately, a distinct lack of instinctive play, what to do with the ball. He makes the wrong runs. He has to think. You see him actually trying to decide what he's trying to do when he's got the ball or when the ball's on his way to him. And if you think of the fact that he's 24 years old and he should be approaching his peak, that instinctive reaction, that instinctive way to play and knowing where his teammates are, a team he's been at for over, I think it's 8 or 9 years, maybe probably more, he should be there. If you look at the Ox, who's 20, 4 years younger, who's nowhere near his peak, the Ox has got that instinct. And the Ox has got that instinct. He knows where to make the runs. He runs at players. He wants to run at players. Theo doesn't seem to want to run at players anymore. Theo in big games goes missing at times. There's some compensatory reasons for that. But he does like the sack past the Sanya and hide in midfield. Yes, he had a very good season last season. Yes, he's been injured, but you've got to look at it. What's best for the team? £100,000 a week person who's going to sit on the bench and hides because there's an England game coming up next week, or a proven striker who's going to pay up front and playing with us with Ozil and our midfield behind him, probably going to score 35, 40 goals and win us the league and probably get us through to the last 8 or even 4 of the Champions League. It's a no-brainer.
Oh, no. It's not a question of... Sorry,
one minute, let me finish and then you can come in. It's a no-brainer. And the fact is, I'd love Walcott to prove me wrong on Saturday and go out there and annihilate Manchester City and Chelsea. I'd love him to do it. But having watched him for many, many a year, I think he just is not a natural footballer. He's a runner with the ball, and he's been a great servant to the club. He's played really well, but he's not going to become a world-class player. And we as a club now, we're not experimenting. We're not keeping players we don't think are going to make it, are going to go to the top with Arsenal. Now, I would like Mr. Walcott to come out and think to himself, well, I want to get on that plane to Rio. I've got to get some game time. I've got to start impressing in training. And when I get on the pitch, I've got to make a difference, not only assisting people, I've got to finish properly. And when Ozil picks you out 3 times against Sunderland, who are a crap side, and you don't finish every time, questions need asking. Hello?
Yeah, we're all here.
Questions need asking. And I think... maybe £50 million is a bit steep for Suarez. If it was £40 million and Walcott, then maybe that's an argument. But I also sympathise with your assertion that if you throw enough money at Liverpool, they'll sell him anyway.
I think my take on it, right, is the 2 questions you've got to ask yourself is, will Arsenal or can Arsenal win the league with Theo Walcott? And I think the jury's going to be out on that one. But if you were to ask me, can Arsenal win the league with Luis Suarez? I think I'll probably say yes. I mean, to link it all together, one of the previous questions being, do Arsenal need to sell a winger and who? I think, if they're going to sell one, I can't see with Gnabry and Chamberlain playing that position, then, I think I think he can be surplus to requirements. I mean, what Suarez can bring to the team, I mean, we've seen on many occasions this season, he can run at people, he can head from outside the box. The guy is a phenomenal player. I think he can bring more to this squad than what Walcott can. And I thoroughly agree with Steve saying I'd love to see him come good. However, I just can't see it. I think, if you look at the years and the progression that he showed, I don't think it's good enough for what we have in the team right now with Ozil. But FK, I know you're probably going to disagree with me.
No, I don't want to disagree. I just want to maybe clarify my point. The question asked was, would you pay 50 million plus Walcott for Suarez? If you're comparing the individual guys as players, there's no contest. You would have Suarez in your team over Walcott, but that wasn't the question. I mean, you would have Suarez in a heartbeat over Walcott, and he'd probably start 99 times out of 100. But the question was, do you think Suarez is worth 50 million plus Walcott? And I would say no, and I think Walcott is an important player. Imagine what you could do with Walcott on the right, Suarez maybe drifting on the left, and Giroud up front. You can have both in the same team. I just think that's a lot of money and a lot of talent to go for one player. That's all. I just wanted to clarify that. It wasn't the case of who would I have. I would never have Walcott over Suarez. Absolutely not. That would just be a silly thing to say.
Okay. Before people start saying we're down on Walcott, because I know sometimes people get the wrong end of the stick.
Jenkinson.
I would put Walcott with Ramsey and Wilshere as the three human beings I would most like to see succeed in football, and probably have Gibbs slightly behind them. But Walcott, I feel attached to him as a player because he's been with us as such a young kid. I would love it if he manages to go on from like he did last season with 22 goals and all the assists, and go on and end up banging in hat-tricks and being our main man, being the new Henry. But I sometimes think, is he really going to do that? But I'm fully, as long as he's at the club, I know we're all fully behind him.
Exactly. Right, we'll go to Phil next, and I understand you have a question from your Twitter, Phil.
Yeah, there's a question that Dave Gardner has asked on Twitter, which is he is at Dave Mr. Lean, confusing me with his name there. He's asked, do we have any thoughts on Silent Stan's son Josh joining the board? And I know you guys did cover this a bit last week, but I just wanted to make a couple of points on it, because I think it's basically not a good appointment, because the board have a duty. They have a moral duty to fans to run the club for the fans, but they actually have a legal duty to the other shareholders to exercise proper corporate governance. And merely putting the majority owner's son on the board is not, in my opinion, exercising proper corporate governance. So, does he have football knowledge? No. Does he have business knowledge? Well, he has some, but does he have any more than the rest of the board already have? Does he offer anything that the rest of the board doesn't? Does he offer anything that Stan Kroenke doesn't offer? I can't see what it is if he has something. So what is he actually bringing to the board other than lowering the average age? So as far as I can see, it's a PR statement that Stan is here for the long term. That's all it is. Is Josh Kroenke even going to be over in England more than maybe a week or two every year, actually doing stuff for Arsenal? If so, what is he actually going to do? Because I can't see it. So I'm disappointed that after 2.5 years of Stan Kroenke's ownership, the extent of freshening up the board is introducing his 33-year-old son. And what our board needs is football knowledge and experience, and everybody on that board has only got experience of Arsenal. We need people with football experience who have experienced other clubs, possibly other countries, preferably within Europe, so we're talking about similar leagues. But we need an influx of knowledge there, and I don't think we're getting it with Josh Kroenke. So that's my view on that one.
Okie dokie. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to add to that, or?
There is one Facebook question which has got a bit of a twist at the end of it, from Jason Davis, and he says, with City and Chelsea our next games, do you think Arsenal looks forward to taking on the big boys as much as Brendan Rodgers does? Well, judging from Twitter this morning, I think Brendan Rodgers likes taking on the big boys quite a lot more than Arsenal does. I think you see what I did there. I think we can move on now.
I've got the final two questions from Twitter, but they're both linked. So I'll ask one, and then I'll ask the other one straight after. It says from did you just read one out from Jake Riley?
No.
All right, Jake Riley, who is at JakeeRileyy. How happy is everybody about drawing the, and I shall insert the word, Lady Gardens in the FA Cup? And the follow-on question from that is from Sam Thompson, which is Sam Thompson AFC. Who do you think we will draw in the fourth round of the FA Cup? That's a very good question. I like what he's done there. So I am delighted that we are playing them. I'm even more delighted we're playing them at home because I think we're going to win it. And a chance to beat them scumbags is always a beautiful thing. And watch that £109 million worth of fertiliser not living up to the expectations that I think the Spurs fans have hyped on them, piled on them. That they're going to struggle to live up to straight away. You can't buy an entire squad virtually and expect them to gel instantly. It's not going to happen. And who do we get in the fourth round? Peterborough, my local boys, coming to Arsenal and then getting a draw, taking them back to London Road and Arsenal winning there, but a payday for the mighty Posh.
On Tottenham, you can't silence people that already don't speak. Oh.
They speak by stamping their hooves.
So
I'm just looking forward to ending their season for them.
Well,
it's their World Cup final, isn't it? Well, they'll get beaten. Their season will be over the day after, and we'll be in the draw, and they won't.
What do you think about that?
It's a good chance. You're right, Steve. It's a good chance for us to end their season, and then maybe we can get somebody big in the fourth round like Peterborough.
Hey,
absolutely.
I like what you've done there. Go on, FK. Delight us.
Mate, I'm obviously it's great to look forward to another North London derby. It's a shame it's so early in the competition, but let's play them. I think I'm most disappointed by the fact that it's an evening kickoff because I've got one of my best mates' weddings and I'm not going to be able to go to the wedding now. So
that's priorities.
That's actually one of the worst things about it. It just shows how TV companies,
honestly,
it's really stupid to allow the fans to be in the pub all day.
If you've got
9,000 Tottenham fans marauding around the Emirates Stadium, it's a recipe for disaster and trouble. And I'm really surprised the Met Police have not objected to the kickoff time. It's going to be utterly ridiculous. And as somebody said on Twitter, anybody who causes aggravation at football matches is going to be there. And then, of course, when it does kick off, ITV will, be giving disgraceful scenes at North London derby, police this, police that, but it's their bloody fault. In fact, actually, I'd like to make Adrian Charles solely responsible for all of it and jail him. How about that?
Well, also, how long do you think it'll be before you get Spurs fans saying, at least now we can concentrate on the Europa League. Oh, Juventus and Napoli, well, there's always next season. What are you going to say, FK, before I rudely spoke over you? I'm very sorry, sir.
No, mate, no, not at all. I just hope Arsenal takes the FA Cup really seriously this year. I mean, we did last year, and obviously we got beat by Blackburn, was it?
Yeah, Blackburn.
Home? I mean, we played a strong team. It wasn't a case of us resting players, but this is such a great opportunity. Let's go on and win it. Let's go on and give it our best shot. Take every game really seriously, and march to Wembley. That's what I want to see.
What do you think, Lord Gimli of Wales?
I think it's wonderful. I do actually relish the chance of having them this early in the competition, just so we can put them on their arse, fuck them off out of it, and like it's already been said, end their season nice and early.
Right,
I think it's a bit much. I think it's a bit much though to charge them £85 for 45 minutes of football and then they all go home at half time as usual. But there we go. I actually don't have any more Facebook questions. We've answered most of them already.
Should we move this Gooner Love train on then? Because I'm sure we've all got stuff to be doing.
So we've got some predictions about a little match that's going to take place over the weekend.
Oh dear.
At the
Are we going to talk about team selection for that?
I think the only question is central midfield, Flamini or Arteta?
Flamini.
Well, what other questions are there?
Do you bring Walcott back in?
Do you want Walcott back in?
As long as he's Yaya or...
And at the expense of whom?
No, I think Yaya will try and kill him. He'll bend him up in little pieces and put him in his pocket. I think it's a bit too soon for Walcott to be coming back.
I think he will make an appearance. I think
not starting.
No, I think he will make an appearance. But we've got to start with Fabini, and we've got basically Touré's got to be stopped marauding around the midfield as he likes. Simple as that.
Oh, saying African names, I know he's French, but it sounds I don't know what I was going there. I'm just looking at the injuries list. Someone pointed out to me that I keep saying Sagna. It's not Sagna, it's
Sagna.
Sagna, and he's been bugging me for weeks about it until I finally said, "What the hell are you on about?" I say it's Sagna, and he said it's not Sagna. So I'm very sorry about that.
You went to the Gav School of Pronunciation of Football players. Sejuan.
Yeah, but we're talking about the injuries. Sanya and Miyachi. See, straight away, and I muck it up. Sanya, Bakary, and Miyachi are still out injured. Sonogo is not back till January. Podolski is training. Do you see the brilliant? Who's that? That Kieran. Kieran takes the photos at the reserve games. He took
Kieran AFC photos. Yeah.
Oh, the
Good
man,
guy.
he's a lovely bloke, and he pays out of his own pocket to go to all those games, and he needs a new camera, so I think we should all have a whip round for him. But he was taking some, retweeting some brilliant pictures that somebody took of Podolski running past Mertesacker in training, and I thought that was wonderful. But still, not much news on the Ox coming back. It says here it's going to be mid-January.
Yep.
So that's getting worrying. Because it's a knee injury, and that tends to go on and on, doesn't it?
Didn't he have a setback? He was due back about this time, but then he had a setback till after Christmas, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And it's and also someone retweeted I can't remember who. It might have been UFK. Someone retweeted something about no, it was you, Steve, about a physio doing an article about Diaby and all his injuries and his leg being 6 centimetres too short. I thought that was quite a really interesting read where he's comparing it to other ones and saying on average players should expect 2 injuries per season.
Oh, you should retweet that from the account then.
Yeah.
Fair.
Did you read that, Phil?
What's that, mate?
About Diaby and all his injuries, and there was this article that a physio had done explaining about his injuries, and that most players only have 2 injuries per season. He worked out to be about 5 or 6, and he's had 29 injuries. And the physio was just explaining about it in a blog with photos and X-rays of similar cases. It was really interesting.
I have not seen that, no, but I'm surprised he gets more than 2 injuries a season because he doesn't play more than 2 games a season, does he?
Yeah. Unless one of those games is falling down a flight of stairs, how can he do more than 1 injury?
He was last seen by an Arsenal taxi driver running across a pedestrian crossing in Pall Mall with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Oh, dear.
Right,
we're going to get this moving,
to the
Gim.
topic,
Yes.
everybody, and I want some predictions, please.
Oh.
So, Danny, I'm going to start with you.
I think we're going to lose 1-0. No, 2-0. Yeah,
Okay.
2-0. And I think the Aguero will score the first goal.
Okay, Steve?
I think we'll draw 2-2. I think Aguero will score first. I think the first Arsenal score will be Aaron Ramsey.
Fucking hell, I had that as well, you cunt.
Oi!
Sorry.
Language,
No.
Timothy.
There's not been one C word, and then the host lets the side down with a vile Welsh outburst. You just can't take him anywhere.
No.
Oh, where was the mute button?
He's back to the Gimli diddly, and he's off like a potty mouth trollop.
P. Jiddly.
That's him.
No, that's the one. FK?
I'm going 1-1. Walcott to get our goal, but I think they'll score first, Negredo.
Okay, and Phil?
Well, I'm going 1-1 as well. I would say Ozil with our goal, and I don't care who scores theirs.
See, okay, right, this
Running
is where I'm
game.
going to trump a lot of you. I was going to go 2-2, but I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal, and I'm going to have Ramsey to be the first
You're
scorer.
all bloody delusional. They played 7-1-7, scored 100 goals at home already this season.
It's got to end some point.
Yeah, that's what they all
Why
say.
can't it be us?
Yeah.
I agree.
It will be. It
Right.
will be. Let's just a little bit of positivity in the tea cakes, fellas. Right.
Yeah, well,
and
we've had a great run up so far. We've got to mention. Do you want to give out the Facebook address, Steve?
Well, dear, I dare. You put me on the spot now. Hold on a minute, I can just do that.
I
So
can tell you what it is if you want.
go on, because I can't see my screen.
www.facebook.com/the AFC podcast. On Twitter, we are at the AFC podcast. On YouTube, go and search for Bergkamp Wonderland, not our Bergkamp, because that was too many letters. We are also on RSS, Feedburner. If you have a Pure Evoke digital radio, we're on there, which I got them to do, which is absolutely brilliant. That's how I listen to ourselves. We're on Instagram, but as it's only a mobile phone app, there's not one single photo on it because we don't know how to use it. And thanks to Steve's contacts, we are also on Adult Friends Finder. If you go to the pensions section, there's Steve in all his glory. And if you want to see any of those things again, go to www.bergkampwonderland.co.uk and then go and have a look at the tab that says Contact Us and have a look at the beautiful work that took me 2 hours to do that no one has even given half of a flying fish cake about, which is really depressing because I think it looks beautiful. But what would I know? I'm biased. I did all the time doing it and no one cares.
Okay, now we're still on you then. Can we have a couple of shout-outs, please?
Oh, right. I said the first three to give that ask for a shout-out that say something funny. So Ray C, who is at SONBI74. He's from Colorado, the US of A. Marco, who is at MARUAFC, and he is from Mainz in Germany. Hello. And the last one is LOS Daguna, which is, as it sounds. And he is in New York City, and he said he wanted it, and if nobody would let him have it, he'd throw down with anybody. So I think that's a fight waiting with our very own, the angry Venezuelan, who will put some moves on him, because he was number 6 in the Texas wrestling thing, collegiate wrestling thing when he was at school.
He'll knock his block off.
Oh, he'll jump all over him, his bones.
Steve, you next, please.
Well, I've got one shout out, and this is a guy called Joel the Wine Guy, and you can find him at Non-Flying Iceman.
It's good.
And he's a top bloke, and he was out here in Krakow for Christmas and New Year last year with his missus. He had a great time. Very knowledgeable man about Arsenal, and quite funny guy as well. And my second shout out is more really a sympathetic, compensatory message for all those poor ladies that FK's molested over the last 4 weeks. His disgraceful behaviour at the FBA Awards. Ooh. And we are still having to keep him under wraps from Gordon McQueen, who's in hot pursuit.
Hayley McQueen's still in a wheelchair after that night, thanks to you.
Still rubbing on cream bi-hourly.
Love
she got shares in Vaseline because of you prick. Right then. FK, yours, please.
Just a couple. Hey, first of all, just a quick hi to Ray C, who you've already shouted out. One is Sadia Benguna. You've had her on the show before.
You bastard.
Lovely. Hello, Sadia.
Hello, Sadia. At the Goonerette. And surprise, another woman. Jessica DeMarco. She's been a great follow. I've started following her, interacting with her recently. So she's on at JDIMARCA, J DeMarco.
I think most of the boys would like to interact with Jessica. Well, we read out a Twitter question from her earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Indeed. Football knowledge. She's Arsenal runs her life, apparently.
Yeah, and it ruins it. And she's biased. But she's very, very good. Go and give her a follow. And Phil? Sadia, who's going to be on again one day soon if we ever get around to it.
She will be. Phil, you next, please.
I'll just mention one person because he's the guy who FFs me every week, Andy Wood, who's at Yorkshire Gunner on Twitter, who's a very funny bloke. You probably follow him already, but he's
had him on.
Yeah, we've had him on a few times.
Well, there you go. He even came down for the Marseille game, so I got to meet him in person. So considering all the FFs he's given me, I think I should at least mention him.
And do you want to mention your blog as well, which is personally, I say, I don't know if you ever listen, Phil, because you're too busy, but whenever we talk about blogs, I say the first blog I read every week is your one, and then I read a few other ones, and I have done for years. Very good.
You're very kind.
No, seriously, I do. I love it.
I haven't had time to write as much as I should lately, so it's going to miss a bit, but it's called Angry of Islington, and there's always new original stuff on there. When there is, what I'm saying is when there is stuff, it's new and original. And I try and be slightly off, the kind of mainstream stuff. I do a fair bit about the finances and that kind of thing. So if you're interested in that, then go and have a read.
And we will link to that on the main page of this podcast. And you are actually in our Arsenal links as well on the website, which you have been for ages.
A top blog.
Yeah.
I would say if you want a good laugh, go and read some of Phil's Tottenham baiting blogs and read the comments. Some of them are absolutely hysterical.
And they never stop.
You need to read the comments because what I managed to do is normally get the word Spurs into the title, and that attracts them all on News Now, and I get thousands of Spurs fans turning up irate and incandescent about me taking the piss out of them.
Don't you want to say hello to your mate Tim Payton, who's part of the AST?
Tim is currently in Australia following the cricket, which is going even worse than Arsenal's recent matches, so I have no sympathy for him at all.
Hello, Tim, if you're listening. We miss you, you cheeky monkey.
Yeah, put that £8 pint down and stop sunning yourself. Have you noticed all the freeloaders are abroad? Tim Payton, Jeff.
Laundering money,
white slave trade. It's just, event Payton strikes again.
Oh, dear.
Right.
Where are we? Have you got any shout-outs, Mr. Gimli?
Yeah, just the one. Just like Steve stole my score, FK stole one of my shout out, my only shout out. My shout out to goes to Sadia at the Goonerette, whose birthday it was this week, and I didn't wish her a happy birthday at the time because I haven't been on Twitter a lot lately.
You've got some lovely flowers.
Yes, just because I've been a very busy boy. But
Shit, who else's birthday was it?
Oh no, there's a birthday this coming Tuesday. I saw it on BBC News.
Kimberly.
I saw it.
Sorry, Kimberly. Surprise, surprise. Another female. At Kimmy _
Fucking
Arsenal.
stop it, you missed it.
No,
She's brilliant.
there's a
I
more
love following
important
her. She's
birthday, FK. This coming Tuesday.
Sorry. Go on.
I can't think who it was. Some short Welsh bloke lives in a castle. He's going to be 76.
no, 712
It's 712.
Yep.
What, millimeters or years?
centimeters.
Oh, hello. You wish.
Around.
Happy birthday for Tuesday, Mr. Gimli.
Birthday
To you. Happy
birthday, dear gay
Happy
Gimli.
birthday, dear bonghead.
Giddy,
You
whatever your
dirty
name is.
monkey.
Happy birthday
To you.
Oh, we love you really, Gim.
Yeah,
Thank you
well,
very much,
yeah.
fellas. I'm glad my living room's painted red.
Are you nursing a semi?
That's,
Detached bungalow.
I don't know about semi. I think fully, maybe. Right.
Time to go.
Yes, it certainly is. Wrap this up, Gim.
Okay, so all that's left then is to thank our wonderful special guest for tonight, Phil. Thank you, Phil, and the panel.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was a Bergkamp Wonderland podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and keep it Arsenal. Good night.
Ho, 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 cheeky monkeys.
Bitches.
Oi,
Bye.
that is the
Bye.
end.